Someone You Should Know, a program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, I welcome you to another edition of Someone You Should Know. As always, glad that you take the time either every Wednesday at 10 a.m. To follow the show or to catch up with it at your own convenience. But I appreciate all the comments that we get week after week. I go out of my way to try and find a variety of different people to feature on the show to present all kinds of different information, be it of an educational, a humorous, or just a fun topic. And I think you'll agree today is going to be a very interesting conversation. We are brought to you today by our good friend Irving Chung, who is a franchise specialist with Fran Guidance and choice. You can reach out if you have any questions. You've always wanted to know what franchising is all about, how much it might cost, whether you can partner with somebody else. Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Is it expensive? Is it, reasonable? Irving's got the answers. You can just reach out to him and ask him. Tell him, I heard about it on Someone You Should Know, and I want to know more about franchising, maybe for now or maybe for later. Irving is a great guy. He is a passionate patriot, and he is also a franchisee himself. So reach out. Irving Chung, nice guy. And here's another nice guy, which you probably have seen before on this very show in several different capacities. My good friend, Paul Hendricks. Welcome, Paul. Glad to have you on the show again.
We thank you, Stuart. I'm very, very glad to be here. Thank you so much.
We have talked because you are somebody that inspire me and so many others because you spent your career in the military, in the Air Force, and then you got out of the Air Force and you continue to pay it back because you worked with veterans in assisting them through the Veterans Center of North Texas. And you have just been all about veterans probably most of your life, I guess it's fair to say.
Absolutely. It's something that if you enjoy doing something, why change?
Yeah, and also I use the word pay it forward, and I think it's important for all of us that whatever we do in our lives and our careers and all, if we can take that knowledge and involvement and pay it forward to assist somebody else, it not only benefits the person that you help, but it benefits yourself also. I'm going to start our discussion a little bit with your career in the Air Force because you go back to the Vietnam era, especially as we were kind of closing out the Vietnam era. And I want you to share a little bit about your career in the Air Force.
Well, what a great opportunity. Thank you. So I'll start out right at the beginning in kind of a short order here. I had no plans to be in the Air Force, or any military. I was one of those lucky enough ones that got drafted out of college. So I was going to college and doing my very best to stay out of the Vietnam War. And lo and behold, I got drafted. I had a low draft number, lottery number. I had been going to school for too long, trying to avoid going in, and so I got drafted. I got drafted into the Army, which would have been fine, but I just couldn't see myself doing that. So somehow I had to finagle my way into the Air Force, and with the goal to get out of the Air Force as soon as possible. But one thing led to another, and I ended up flying B-52s. That was my first operational assignment. I was in B-52s. I've stationed at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, which is since closed as an operational base. And from there, I went to Carswell over here at Fort Worth. But when I first got to Westover, there were no airplanes there. They were all deployed to Southeast Asia. This was in October of 1972. So I checked into the base. I had some training before that, of course. And next morning, I was on a KC-135 headed to Guam. And so ended up in Guam, which is a interesting place to live for a while, and began doing sorties there, which was what's called bullet shot at that time. So I joined up with the crew that I was replacing somebody on, and we flew just like many other of the B-52 crews. We flew out of Guam to South Vietnam and delivered weapons just about every other day that I was there. So that was called the bullet shot program. At the point in time, I didn't really realize what was going on, but we were having a buildup in Southeast Asia to try to bring the North and South Vietnamese together to end this war. So there were some things that happened that were kind of interesting. Secretary Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, was doing negotiations, and that didn't pan out too well. So he said, "Look, if you don't cooperate here, what we're going to do is we're going to do some serious bombing on you in North Vietnam." And that actually started in December, December 18th, 1972. So that began what we call Linebacker 2. Linebacker 2, I flew on day number 2. It was on the 19th of December. Flew out of Guam to North Vietnam over Hanoi, and some B-52s there. And then following that mission, which is a long mission, by the way, it's about 21 hours round trip. Uh, in addition to being a long mission, it's, if you haven't supported that type of combat, it's scary because you're bombing somebody and they're trying to shoot you out of the air with missiles. It becomes it's a real learning experience. It gets your attention in a hurry. So following that first sortie, the crew that I was on was moved to Utapao, Thailand, which is not too far from Bangkok. And we got in a rotation package, and we flew additional 3 different night missions over North Vietnam, over Hanoi, where we got the Allies shot out of us, but fortunately we were able to survive. And then we got into another sortie package over another city in Vietnam called Vinh, and we flew 3 additional sorties here. This all was taking place as the negotiations were continuing, and eventually the war came to an end, and we quit flying over North Vietnam. And this was in late December 1972 is when the ceasefire happened. Kind of interesting thing. One of our sorties, which is the day after Christmas, the 26th of December, 1972, we had flown into North Vietnam. We were had been targeting some railroad yards, is what we were assigned to do. With us, along with quite a few other numbered B-52s. I was in a D package. So our Ds all carried 108 bombs. The Gs carried, I think it was 56 bombs, if my memory is correct. But it was quite an ordeal, all of the airplanes in the air at once. So we had recovered from our sortie in on the 26th of December. We were back at Utapao, and we'd heard on the radio that one of the B-52s had taken a hit. So we had landed, and we were watching for the B-52 to come in. It had sustained 2 SA-2 missiles in the wing. One of its wings had lost controllability, and they should have ejected over the water, but that didn't happen because the gunner had sustained significant injuries. So the crew made a decision to try to get back to Utapao, where the better medical facilities were available. So we're sitting there in our parking spot, getting ready to go back to for our debrief, and we can see the airplane coming in. And he was all over the side, trying to maintain his controllability. We thought, wow, he's just going to make it. But we were wrong. the airplane didn't make it. It crashed on the end of the runway. And, of course, that was a large explosion right in front of our eyes here. And it resulted, 4 of the, 6 crew members died in that crash. 2 of them survived, miraculously. But that was kind of the, in addition to being scared to death because you're getting shot at, seeing people's lives vanish right in front of you is really an experience. Uh, Linebacker to me was a major change in my life. It made me understand what real combat was all about, not just dropping bombs over South Vietnam where there was no threat, to actually dropping bombs on and someone shooting back at you, which is kind of what you expect in warfare to start with. Understanding the utter chaos that goes on in those types of environments, where if you're not scared, you're not prepared. You just need to understand the environment that you're in and the threat that's out there. Of course, you're
and the
disrupting their
mission that you have to follow.
You have no choice. You just have to go. So it was really so caused a lot of self inspection and caused a lot of good thinking to go on there. And I had planned to get out of the Air Force. Uh, these missions actually gave me the courage and the desire to continue to stay in the Air Force and not to necessarily fly, but I just saw the good things that were going on. And in lieu of staying for 6 years, like I had planned, I spent 21 and a half years in the Air Force, not flying, but doing other things, which I thought were very, very beneficial.
Did you enter the Air Force as an enlisted person, and then later when for to OCS or something?
No, I went through what's called OTS, Officer Training Squadron, Officer Training School,
Right.
and then graduated from there as a second lieutenant, and went on into flight school, and away I went. Uh, Now, if I would have gone in the army, that would have been
In
different.
Westover, right. So you got commissioned, where was that, in Massachusetts when you first went into the Air Force?
Well, that was my first duty assignment. Was in Massachusetts, which is near Springfield, Massachusetts.
Right.
A very beautiful spot, very cold in the winter. That's what I experienced.
Oh, yeah.
My commissioning was at Lackland Air Force Base. That's where OTS was at that time. And we were trained in World War II barracks, no air conditioning. And in San Antonio, it's kind of nasty in the summertime.
Yep. So you then left the service when? What year did you were you discharged?
So I retired in October of 1990. So I have been out of the Air Force for quite 33 years. Hard to think about. I
Yeah.
went in May of 1970 and then retired in October of 1990. So it's 20 of them for pay, 20 and a half years.
And then back in 1990, then what did you do after the Air Force?
So I went to work for Rockwell uh, International, and it was
Right.
eventually was bought by the Boeing company. And my last assignment in the Air Force, I was on the development test team on the B-1 bomber. I had flown the B-52s early on, and then I got involved in some intelligence community and acquisition business. And at the end of my career, I was selected to be part of the B-1 test team. And so that's what I did at the end of my career, and was actually responsible for delivering the first B-1 bomber to Dyess Air Force Base in 1985. And
That
that,
that
that
had
was interesting.
Yeah, that had to have been incredible, because the B-1 bomber was that was the state of the art at the time. And I mean, the B-52s, I remember it was the size of a small city. an absolutely huge aircraft. And you said that the B-52 that you flew dropped a payload of over 100 bombs at a time?
Correct. 108 500 pounders.
Yeah. Do the math, folks. That's a big, big plane carrying a heavy, heavy load.
Yeah,
And all
and
and
Stuart,
the
another thing is kind of interesting. When we flew B-52 missions, we always had three aircraft flying together. So we had three ship cells. So 108 times three, so it's just 324 bombs, all basically on the same target. So people on the ground or whatever's on the ground there didn't have a whole lot of chance.
right. Amazing. Alright, so you spent time at Rockwell, and you spent time, on the B-1 bombers, and all, and it for somebody that really kinda never wanted to stay in the military, you stayed a long time, and then and and then afterwards, you kinda continued to stay around the air industry.
Oh, so that's correct, Stuart. My goal was and ended up being to be an engineer. So that's what I was working on in college, and I was able to get the deferment and stay out of the army and graduate with my engineering degree. I was at that time was a double E, and so when I went in the Air Force, I told the recruiter. They graciously let me join the Air Force and said, "Hey, what I want to do is become an engineer." Well, that's fine and dandy, but what you're going to be doing is flying airplanes, and so or you can go back to the army. And so I said, "Okay," but I'm getting out as soon as I can. And it just turned out that the experiences and the opportunities I had, especially in the intelligence community, were valuable. I parlayed all that together, and when I went to work for Rockwell, eventually Boeing, I was an engineering manager. I was what's called program manager for major programs. And so I had lots of responsibility, lots of great opportunity, and enjoyed the heck out of it.
Then how did all of this experience and involvement with the Air Force then lead you to, the Veterans Center of North Texas?
Well, that's a great question. So one day I was in a meeting and someone said, "Hey, weren't you in the Air Force?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, you're a veteran, right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a veteran." Well, there's going to be a meeting to talk about veterans benefits and what we can do to help veterans. This was about 2012. I had retired from the Boeing company at the end of 2011, and I was involved in a few chambers of commerce. So people were getting out of the military, Desert Storm, and Gulf Wars, and there was a lot of confusion, a lot of concern. The VA, especially, was taking a lot of negative hits, and so people wanted to raise money and do something. And I said, "Well, I'd be glad to help you, but we have to figure out, get organized here. We can't just try to raise money. You got to have a plan and all that." One thing led to another, and my organizational skills, I think, took over, and that's how we ended up defining what we wanted to do, put a program together, and then executed that program for my case for nearly 10 years as a volunteer and leader for the Veteran Center of North Texas.
Yeah, and we have spoken about that before on a previous show, and the one thing about that organization was that, there was no overhead. Everyone was a volunteer, and so every dollar that came in went to help, veterans, whether it was helping them with relocation, helping them find a career move because they could use the center to work on their resume skills, and all, or even if it was just to help them with a tank of gas so they could get from point A to point B.
Oh,
And, and you operated it through the pandemic, which really took a hit because a lot of the regular programs to raise funds were just non-existent because you couldn't hold public get-togethers. But Yeah, I commend you and your staff. You persevered through that and really made a dent in the ability to help our veterans.
Well, thank you, Stuart. We closed our doors, I think, 2 days during the pandemic, and we finally decided that we were here to serve the community, not serve ourselves, and so we opened our doors again. We put some barricades up, these plexiglass barricades. We all put our masks on and continue to serve our community. And I think we did make a difference. Was
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of the people that were able to take advantage of the services you provided turned around to pay it forward and help other veterans, and also to volunteer with the organization. So, you've been in the Air Force, you've been with Lockheed, with Boeing and all. Then you're with the Veterans Center. Now, this is a guy who really didn't want to spend much time in the military or uh, around the military lifestyle, but now you're what, 30 some years into it?
Yep.
And I think you kinda earned your retirement, Paul, but you still haven't taken it, have you?
No, no.
You're a
I'm involved in a lot of things, and I guess people that like to do community work and reach out are always busy. And I can't imagine myself just sitting around. Most recently, I've become very active in what's called the Air and Space Forces Association, or AFA for short. And I'm an elected position there, national director at large for the Air and Space Forces Association. And I've been a life member of the AFA for over 50 years. And it was a good organization. I found opportunity to continue to apply some of my information skills to help that organization out. I'm one of 14 national directors, so it's not a unique position for me. But I am a voting member of the board, and I think this could be a great opportunity. I see you got my airplane up there. If I be one.
yeah,
Uh, but the role I'm playing on the board today for the EFA is I run what's called the advocacy. I'm the chair of the advocacy committee, and so we are our role there is to advocate for resources to support the Air Force and the Space Force. If I could spend a moment discussing what those organizations are.
please, please
Uh,
do.
the Air Force, which we classically remember are the elements that for flying aircraft, air breathers, uh, missiles for nuclear defense are the two primary efforts here. Of course, the aircraft can either be conventional or nuclear capable. And then historically, there's always been a role for the Air Force in space. President Trump, with I'm sure some guidance, issued plan in about 2019, I think it was 18 or 19, to create a new service called the Space Force. So the Space Force, I believe they were commissioned in 2019. The Space Force is like the Marines to the Navy. Space Force is like is an element of the Department of the Air Force. So the Department of the Air Force has the classical Air Force that we know, and now the Space Force. They're two different services that fall underneath the Secretary of the Air Force. The Air Force Association, which I'm a member of and support, uh, had changed their title to try to fully embrace both elements of the Department of the Air Force. So we are now the Air and Space Forces, with the plural, association. So we represent the classical elements of the United States Air Force, and we also represent the very up and coming and highly dominant space force. I think we all know a little bit about space, uh, but to be honest with you, I have really did not have a whole lot of background other than the intuition of satellites and that sort of thing. Uh, I have learned a lot about space force. There's a lot going on. If 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 we lost the capability today, right now, to command in space that's above us, you and I wouldn't be talking because we are dependent upon satellites.
That's right. Very, very. And what's interesting, and I really learned about it because I started to delve into it a little bit when we first talked. Uh, I thought that the Air and Space Forces Association was a brand new agency, but it really was started back at World War II. Uh, when really wasn't the Air Force was originally the Army Air Corps. And then it became the Air Force. So the Air Force Association goes back to World War II times, and it has just morphed over the years and grown and expanded a lot of their capabilities. And you said that you've been involved with them for many, many years. So you have watched that growth come up to today where it now and very recently became the Air and Space Forces Association.
That's correct. And so the goal here is to remain relevant to the community that we serve. And so indeed that's why the name change and the focus is changed. So in the Air Force, we have the Air Force is made up of airmen. The Space Force, however, is made up of guardians. So if you saw a person that was in the Space Force and you could recognize them by their name badges and insignias, and also the uniforms are different. Uh, you would address them as guardians. And like in the Air Force, we have wings and squadrons. In the Space Force, those wings are called deltas. So they have a different organization, different nomenclature uh, to make this relevant. But the Space Force is highly dependent upon the Air Force for a lot of what I call the infrastructure. CBPO, the administration, the hospital functions, security guards. Those are all Air Force people that are supporting the Space Force. So, just like on the Navy bases, you see a lot of Marines doing a lot of work with the Navy. So it's a very collaborative relationship.
Right. And often there's some crossover between the Coast Guard and the Navy also, interacting with each other. Uh, yeah, the first I didn't realize the first president of the Air Force Association was, Doolittle.
Ah, yes, General Doolittle.
Yeah, Jimmy Doolittle.
He founded the AFA. I believe it was 1946.
Yeah.
And his edict was right after World War II. We have got something going here. Let's keep this going and let's support uh, the Air Force through the Air and Space Force, excuse me, the Air Force Association. Um, Even in those early days, they were talking about things in space. They may not have had as much command on it as they would today, but indeed, that's what General Doolittle was doing.
And every president has been involved in the Air Force Association in reviewing and enhancing the mission of that association. And that I think is, pretty incredible in itself.
Absolutely. So it just goes to show you our political uh, leaders are very interested in all of the associations to keep them strong, keep our veteran community engaged, because there's a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge available that can be applied both into our civilian as well as military community from veterans, which is really a good way to go.
Yeah. So, in addition to that, now you're also, we're coming up on and it's hard for me to even believe, uh, the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. Uh, I'm a Vietnam veteran myself, and it's just hard to believe that it was that long ago. But this year we're commemorating the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Paris peace accord and all. And you're n- not one to sit back. You're actively involved in the program for this. So please share the information about what's coming up in March.
Well, let me kind of take a step back here. So the Air and Space Forces Association globally, of which there's about 200 chapters around the world, uh, we are trying to recognize, celebrate, and honor uh, the end of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War officially ended on January 28th, 1973, with the signing of the Paris Peace Accords. Now, it took a couple years to get all of the resources out of Vietnam and get things closed down. So this celebration will go on between now and 2025, from the beginning to the end to the very end, if you will. Uh, so the AFA is encouraging chapters all across the nation to have recognition and celebration. We had one a couple weeks ago over in Linden, Texas. I'd like to just briefly talk about that because it was a milestone event. That event happened uh, in the middle of January, and it happened in Linden, Texas. And the reason it happened in Linden, Texas was the last enlisted man to die in Vietnam is buried there. So on January 27th, 1973, in Da Nang, you might have heard of Da Nang before, we came under a mortar attack, and Sergeant John Rucker was asleep in his barracks, and unfortunately, he died during that attack. So he was the last known American military person to die. He was also coincidentally a member of the Air Force. So we had a celebration there, the middle of January. It was quite a celebration to recognize the men and women that supported the Vietnam War, and to remember the 58,000 men and women that lost their lives, and also specifically to recognize Sergeant Rucker, who lost his life there. His family's still there, by the way. Believe this or not, his mother is still there
Wow.
50 years later. So
Yeah.
uh, Linden is a small town, and they roll out the red carpet for us. Now, we have another one coming up here in Dallas. And remember, we're trying to have these all over the country. We have another major event coming up on March the 21st. And I'm hoping that everybody that hears about what we're talking about here today plan to come. This event is going to be held at the Frontiers of Flight Museum, which is right near uh, Love Field. It's going to be held from 10 o'clock until noon on this a Tuesday at the Frontiers of Flight Museum. There'll be plenty of seating and plenty of parking available. And we have 5 or 6 different organizations which are sponsoring this event. And this is open to not just Air Force, it's open to uh, veterans of all services. They don't necessarily have to be a Vietnam veteran by any means, because we think it's important for the younger folks, especially, to remember Vietnam, remember maybe their uh, relatives that either participated or perished in this war.
Right.
And it wasn't a pleasant war. Did not get public praise.
Yeah. It was probably the most unique war that we were ever involved in. From a public acceptance and involvement standpoint, as well as what the political and military ramifications were.
It's the only war, the first war that was covered live on television, and obviously the news can turn things around any way they want. Uh, men and women that fought in that war were doing what they were told to do.
That's
What
right.
So, I felt really bad for the folks that didn't get recognized, that they were just doing their job and doing it well.
Right, and most of us came home very, very unappreciated and unrecognized.
So this is an opportunity for us to recognize the men and women that participated in this war. There were over 3.4 million men and women that were involved in this in the war, 20 years worth. Uh, we lost 58,000 men and
Yep,
women. And what's kind of interesting, here in Texas, we have over 400,000 Vietnam veterans live in Texas. Unbelievable.
yeah.
And
Yep,
obviously, we can't support 400,000 at our meeting, but we want to recognize them virtually as well as in person at this event.
and this event is going to be, here in, Dallas at, Dallas Love Field, on the 21st of March, uh, but for those that are listening or and watching from elsewhere around the country, you said that there are going to be, these commemorations around the country. What is the best way for people to find out, where there is going to be a commemoration, in and around their city?
So that's a great question. The best thing to do today is to go to the AFA website, and that's afa.org, and look at events. That's the best way to get the global picture. Again, this is not an Air Force activity. The Air Force Association just happens to be the catalyst to make it happen. It could be any service, any community, sponsor it, but we'll try to have a list of all of the activities as they continue to evolve over the next couple of years.
And the website, which is up on the screen right now, is just well worth visiting because there is just so much information on past events, current events, future events, about membership, and so much of what the Air Force Association did originally, and how it morphed through the years, and how it eventually became the Air and Space Forces Association today. And, boy, the list of people involved on the board and everything is a real who's who, of the military too. There's a lot of experience and knowledge, in and among the group, yourself included.
Well, thank you. I feel proud to be with the other leaders. I guarantee you that. A lot of experience, a lot of senior ranking officers. I retired too soon to become a senior ranking officer, but it's a privilege to be with them. It's a privilege to be part of the board and help provide steering and direction for our association. But the most important thing is to reach out to our uh, community and invite them to come to this upcoming event here in Dallas. This is not a Dallas celebration. This is a North Texas celebration. Just happens to be convenient to be at Frontiers of Light Museum at Love Field on the 21st of March. There's no charge to come, by the way.
And no charge at all. Amazing. That, this is that and the Frontier of Flight Museum is quite a place in itself. So it's a wonderful place to wonderful to have this. The information is scrolling across the screen. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Paul directly. He'll answer those questions and assist you if you want to get involved in any way, or you just want to be a participant at the event and find out a little bit more about uh, the Air and Space Forces Association. You're now jumping into the deep end with all of this and getting involved. What's next on Paul Hendricks' agenda? I mean,
Well,
you just you're a glutton for punishment, aren't you?
Stuart, in addition to focusing on these types of things and the Collin County Veterans Coalition, which I run, uh, we want to really advocate uh, and that's my primary goal here, advocate for veterans benefits here in Texas. So be sure that our veterans in Texas here are taken care of at the state level, and also advocate for the systems, the benefits, the services at the national level for our active duty personnel and the weapon systems that they fly and operate. So
Right.
I'm head over heels on that.
And that's why I say, folks, you don't have to be from Texas to be involved in this association. Wherever you are, if you served in the Air Force, you want to just be a part of a great military organization, go online, learn a little bit about it, and reach out if you have questions. Paul, you are a real inspiration to our veterans, both having been served in our military and also, but I have often said just paying it forward by devoting the rest of your life to making sure that veterans are understood and recognized and honored, just so much a part of our lives.
Well,
And I
Stuart, thank you. Thank you so much. I have one thing to say to you. Welcome home.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that, and I hope to have the opportunity later this month to be at the event and shake hands with my brothers and sisters and welcome them home as well. And Paul, thank you for what you have done and continue to do for our military and for our brothers and sisters who have worn the uniform to defend our country. I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Stuart. And I enjoyed being with you today.
I end the show by saying, "Be yourself because everyone else is taken," and Paul Hendricks certainly is already taken. So thank you for being a part of another episode of Someone You Should Know. And again, thank you to my good friend Paul Hendricks, and make it a good day.
Thank you.